if you get successful like that, then it's only going to get worse. You would have a real relationship with them.
Mhm.
They would be going places with you. You would be talking to them all the time. And you would have to actually build trust with each other. If you don't build any kind of personal rapport, then how do you build confidence in each other?
Have you been needing help, some support? Maybe you're considering hiring an assistant or a virtual assistant. If you are, this episode is for you. Today, I sit down with Marisa Tragsiel, and we talk about her experience of being a virtual assistant and her perspective from being in that seat. It's eye-opening, to be honest with you, because she shares some insights that if agents do these things, it'll set not only themselves up for success, but anybody who's working with them as well. If you enjoy content like this and past episodes, many of my past episodes, they have been brought to you and sponsored by my good friend Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. The staggering stat of his team, they've closed over $5 billion in transactions. They've helped more than 5,000 families. And so if you have that client, the friend, the relative who's been thinking about making a move to or from the Carolinas, the Bovender team are the folks to call. With that, if you've been a little stuck and challenged with trying to figure out what to do in your business and getting your momentum, Susie Adams and I created Ace Your Day, which is a deck of cards to systematically move you through the different areas of your business. To learn more about that, click the link in the description below. And as always, I'm your host and referral partner out of San Francisco, Sean Conkler. You said something really interesting before we started talking, and I kind of want to go back and unpack it with you, and then I'll give more context of who you are and all of that good stuff to the audience. But when an agent starts working with a virtual assistant, what's generally the first thing that breaks or fails or starts to come apart?
I feel like a lot of times people think of VAs as someone who you can just hire quick and assign all your dirty work to, so that
Mm,
way you can have all of that stuff out of sight, out of mind. But really, a virtual assistant, just like if you had a personal assistant, you would have a real relationship with them.
mhm.
They would be going places with you, you would be talking to them all the time, and you would have to actually build trust with each other.
Yeah.
So with a virtual assistant, because you don't have that in-person relationship, you still have to prioritize building a relationship, building your foundation, developing, a communication system that works for both of you. It's trial and error
Hmm.
anyway.
Hmm.
There's not going to be a virtual assistant that you hire that it just soars right out of the gate. You just have to be willing to go through some trial and error as
It,
well.
it's interesting. I mean, you make such a great point, and I guess I've just never thought about it from that level. But if I hire an assistant, right, they're in my office, they're next to me the majority of the day.
Hmm.
They're asking questions, I'm volleying stuff off of them or going back and forth. But with a virtual assistant, which we'll just refer to as VAs from here on out,
Hmm.
um, it's you usually meet with them for 30 to 60 minutes one time a week. And it's like, it's the swoop and poop.
Yeah.
It's like, this is wrong, do this, fix this, bye.
Hmm.
And that is not, to your point, any way to build a really good relationship with anybody in
Yeah.
any capacity.
Yeah. I almost think that one of the keys to kind of uh, replace that in-person relationship is to embed in your meetings time to actually just get to know each other as people.
Yeah.
It's like you're not going to go all the way to being friends. This is a professional relationship, but if you don't build any kind of personal rapport, then how do you build confidence in each other?
Yeah.
how do you develop any nuance in the relationship?
It's true. It's funny. It's funny that you say that. Cielo was working from home one day, and I was walking downstairs, and I was like, "What am I walking into?" The conversation was, "What do you put on your hot dog?"
Hmm.
And then people were like talking about very specific types of buns, and then specific like sausage versus hot dog, and then people were joking. They're like, "Well, what isn't it a sandwich then?" And then
Yeah.
it was like some people like onions or chili and all these other things, but it was her team, and
Yeah.
it was they like on Fridays. There's one meeting where they end the meeting with a random question, and that
Hmm.
random question was, "What do you eat on your hot dog?" And
Yeah.
they just do random stuff like that. But to your point, I think it strips away the stress. It humanizes the whole experience,
Hmm.
and I think that's we as agents, we get moving so fast, and when we're working with people, we tend to just tell them all the stuff they're doing wrong, but we don't spend the time to nurture and actually work on the business. So
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, on one hand, everybody always says that real estate is relationships, relationships, relationships. And yet, as agents, you find yourself having such a hard time actually being in relationships, you know?
that is a good point. uh,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because if you think of yourself as a solopreneur or you're operating as a solopreneur, then
yeah,
the whole world is on your shoulders. You don't have time to be present.
yeah.
You don't have time to go on tangents in your meeting. In my opinion, I think, letting meetings go on short tangents is the most organic way to build that rapport instead of,
Mm,
icebreakers, right? Like, icebreakers are really good, but obviously if you're just having a one-on-one, that might get a little awkward, and
mm,
but it's like, what's a 5-minute tangent if that conversation gets you to laugh, you learn something about each other,
mm.
and over time that compounds, and
Yeah.
and you actually start to like this person.
Well, I think you make actually a very interesting point because we agents usually go from solo, or if they're on a team, then they go solo. And during that solo period, they are chief cook and bottle washer. Like they have to do everything and anything that's coming their way. And so relationships are to run and drive the business.
Hmm.
But then management isn't that same innate skill. And it's something that needs to be nurtured and brought back to the table. And so it's a totally different hat, relationships versus management,
Yeah.
and managing a person and managing a project. And I think that's, from being on my in my seat as the agent and you being on the seat of the VA, I feel like from my seat that's where it's a challenge. And then I think simultaneously, I don't know if this is me personally or just agents in general, but I have so much pressure on me that I'm under the gun to get shit done right now.
Yeah.
Like I have to get it off my plate right now. So then it becomes very hard to slow down
Hmm.
and walk somebody through how to do something, let alone to have a conversation about what they did over the weekend or things that they enjoy. And then it's hard enough for me to slow down to teach them to do it the right way,
Yeah.
and not just do it myself. So I think I understand the problem is more, it's, it's, it's very complex.
I feel like it's like, if you are, killing it and you're hustling, and you are maybe barely making all your deadlines with your clients, but you're making it, and so you're getting more successful. If you get successful like that, then it's only going to get worse. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
it's
It
only going to
compounds.
get worse. You're never going to have time to slow down if you think of it from that perspective of like, oh, well, right now I just don't have time. You're never going to have time, but if you
Yeah,
think about it, like, with marketing, right? Some marketing is long-term marketing. Some marketing is more immediate. You expect an immediate return.
right.
And or like with a YouTube channel, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time and investment in the YouTube channel, and you just kind of suck it up, and you're just like, one day this is going to pay off. I'm not going to pay attention to that, because if I focus too hard on the day that the payoff comes, then I'm not going to fully be invested. But if you think about building relationships like that, then
Yeah.
it gets a lot easier. And then you think of it more as, okay, the better I build relationships, the more I build relationships, the quicker the returns will come. Because people, if you're doing for people, people want to do for you. If you're,
Yeah.
making connections, and if every time people think of you, they're like, oh my God, I love Sean. He is so funny. He's such a good person. He's so genuine and down to earth. It's no longer transactional. You don't even have to have done something for them. If you call them
Mm.
for a favor, they're gonna do it for you.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's from a relationship perspective, it's all those micro interactions are little deposits into the savings account. And then the
Yeah.
favor is drawing from the account. But if you've done hundreds of thousands of micro um, investments, it's fine. You can take a small
Mhm.
draw at any point.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like all these agents are doing all these events, like real events, micro events, big events, building relationships, even within your team, with your virtual assistant, it's the same thing.
yeah. Yeah. You make a very valid, great point. Um, and to give people to kind of slow down and pull it back so people get some context, you and I have been working together for like a year, over a year.
Mhm.
And you basically run the whole back end production of the podcast, which
Mhm.
is a beast. And I appreciate it. And thank you.
Mhm.
Um, don't blast me on the air for not building a good relationship or the stuff that I've screwed up along the way.
No,
Um,
we have a great
but
relationship.
but you've also been privy to a lot of really interesting conversations because you fly wing with me during a couple really big mastermind groups with some incredibly prolific agents. Um, and I'm curious, what's the one thing, like, what was your aha moment? What was the thing you gleaned that most agents should be doing more of, but aren't?
I think agents oftentimes, especially when you're in the hustle mentality, you want to act because you know, you don't want the foundational work to, just be a procrastination from you acting and launching. But at the same time, if you launch without building a real foundation and almost taking that foundation as seriously enough as your launch, assume that it is your launch, the first step to it. um when you want to launch a project, or integrate a new system, or bring on a new team member, all these new things, if you don't step back and actually build out that foundation and do the unsexy work, then you're just going to be tripping over your feet all the time,
Mm.
the entire way through, and constantly having to backtrack and undo and redo.
I'd be willing to bet the hardest part of your day isn't the work. It's the mental load. It's the decision fatigue. It's the shuffling of priorities while you're already playing catch up. You're checking off things from your to do list just as fast as they're getting added. And I'd also be willing to bet some of those meaningful business relationships you've had in the past have begun to fade. Ace Your Day is a physical deck of 52 strategic cards designed to halt fatigue. Refined by real world results, this system replaces chaos of a to do list with a curated set of high impact actions. It's simple: set a timer for 15 minutes, draw a card, and make your move. The deck handles the thinking, you drive the business. Building a secure business should not be a guessing game. Let's stop overthinking the day and trust a system that prioritizes connections and relationships. Let the deck handle the strategy. you focus on the results. Click the link in the description to reclaim your day 15 minutes at a time. It's funny. I've been on a cooking kick lately. I'm not sure why, but it's when you were sharing that, my mind immediately went to a chef
Mm-hmm.
who, if they know the ingredients in their head and they just, throw it into bowls and mix it and cut it and put it all together, and they know the sequence and the order of everything. But if it's not out of their head and on paper, nobody else around them can replicate that
Yeah.
without them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm hearing you right, the foundational work is slowing down to have that system actually built. But I also think, and here's where I think a nuanced mistake happens within all of this, is agents think, oh, I have to sit down and do this. That's not true. You can have somebody fly wing with you, and you can just kind of talk as you're doing it. The
Mm-hmm.
chef, for example, can be like, "Oh, I'm dicing up the celery now. I'm gonna I'm gonna eyeball it, but it's about 1 cup." The other person standing there is just writing it down,
Mm-hmm.
and putting it into an order, and
Yeah, they're
then
soaking it up like a sponge.
exactly, and
Mm-hmm.
then they take that list that's like chicken scratch and random notes, and it doesn't make any sense. They put it into some semblance of an order. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next time you do it, you're like, let's use this list and see where it's broken. And then you go
Yeah.
literally down the list and you're like, oh, here's like this. We didn't preheat the oven early enough. Let's move that to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of keep reworking that system until it's dialed. And then when you bring somebody in, man, it goes fast. I think from all these 180 conversations I've now had with top agents, I from what I've gleaned and from my own experience, the number one worst hire you can make as your first hire is another agent,
Mm-hmm.
because they have their own way of doing things and there's no common recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second biggest mistake is hiring the assistant, but then expecting them to just know. Hey, friends, I have a small favor to ask. For me to continue to bring you outstanding guests who share their best kept secrets for growing a successful real estate business, please take a moment and hit that like button so agents like you can find this content. And also hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. Now, back to our show.
Yeah. Because even if they know, you are still going to want things done in a particular way. You have your own brand, you have your own
Yes.
language, you have your own everything.
Yes.
So they, even if they have years of experience with all these other agents, it's still not going to work for you.
100%. And I wish more people would really slow down to hear that. And I've seen it so many times. It's like, oh, so and so is an assistant for this person, so I'll hire them. And the person's amazing in their own right, but the systems don't match. And
Hmm.
so the assistant's trying to fight the agent to get them to do this thing. They're not going to do it. And
Yeah.
then the agent's trying to fight to get the system updated. And it's just never happening. It's
Hmm.
people get fixed in their ways. So I agree. I think in that leads onto your earlier point. It's me often and early in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you can mitigate a lot of this stuff.
And also just be willing to launch the thing, see how it works. If it doesn't work, be willing to change it because it's
Yeah.
better to put something out that's not perfect, but at least you have a strategy, at least you are putting it out with the intention of analyzing it and reworking it together as
Yeah.
opposed to, you're taking the prep work seriously, not so
Mhm.
seriously that you never try it, but
Yeah.
inevitably there is no perfect system.
Yeah.
Even if the system works perfectly, for 2026, it works so well.
Yeah.
Times change, systems change, technology changes, you know.
A statutory requirement changes in the process. Everything
Yeah.
changes. Like
Yeah.
it's just like, and that's where this is my observation from my experiences. is if you have the system and you get it dialed, it's awesome. Then people just start going off intuition
Hmm.
and they stop using the system. The second fail that happens is they're out sick. The next person can't jump in because no one knows where it actually is.
Hmm.
And then the other byproduct of that happening too much is something changes, gets updated, but it doesn't actually get updated. And
Yeah.
so the next time you run it, you're running the wrong system and you basically create the same problem the next time. And then it just it's you constantly have to use the recipe to make sure that it's right every time. And I know agents who are listening to this is like cringe and it's like the part that stresses us out the most, but that's where having somebody if you're at to the point if you're at the point of support or considering support, like this is the critical thing that separates the top teams from everybody else.
Yeah, you
It
don't want to get too comfortable that you actually stop taking every step of the way seriously.
you know, I've shared this before on the podcast. You do the editing, so I'm sure you heard it to nauseum. But a system, if you have a system and process that's dialed, that that same thing is what ensures when you order the burger at McDonald's in California, it's the exact same burger you're going to get when you're in Florida
Hmm.
than if you're in Connecticut or Wisconsin. And it's going to go through the same process on the back end before it gets to you on that tray.
Yeah, I
And
stopped going to a restaurant. There's a Vietnamese restaurant by my house, and I've ordered curry there, the same green curry every time, and every time it's different. If I get, if I happen to catch the chef that makes it how I like it, then I'm so happy. It's the best curry I've ever had. But sometimes it's completely different. It's a completely different recipe. And so I asked them, I'm like, why is it that every time I get it, it's different? And they were like, oh, well, it depends on the chef. And I'm like, why does it depend on the chef? That doesn't make any sense. So I just stopped
that's
going there.
and there's the byproduct,
Yeah.
right? You just voted with your feet if you liked it or not. You
Hmm.
stopped going there. And because there's no training on the back end, there's no consistency. And
Yeah.
so when that chef is off for the day, it's either really amazing or really bad, but it's anybody's gamble. But then as the consumer, you're like, too inconsistent. I'm out, not
Hmm.
going back. And unfortunately, with us, these deals are so freaking complex. If you don't get hired, that's first of all, it's a significant amount of money. But downline, that's a ton of referrals. It could be a future sale. It could be family, friends, all these other referrals linked to it. It could be very significant for the business.
Hmm.
And people feel it. They know when there's an inconsistency. They know when there's snafus. Um, and I've had them. Like I've, as hard as we tried, we get this podcast out every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. I've definitely I've had stuff go out late. It's by mistake or somebody like mistakes happen. That's fine. And I think that the thing that I've learned is the default is it's a process problem, not a people problem.
Yeah.
It's not so and so screwed up. It's probably somewhere in the system
Yeah.
that we need to go back and look at and evaluate and just do a double check on that thing.
Yeah. Add something to
Fix
the checklist.
yeah, and fix that thing, and
Hmm.
then you never have to worry about it again. But I think from to going back to your point about the Vietnamese place with an erratic experience is if you have a let's say we have a 107 step listing process to get a
Hmm.
property from contract to close. And if I'm running the list, if Nancy's running the list, or if you were to come in and literally pick up the list, it's the same list.
Hmm.
And just by following the list, you will do things in the right order at the right times. It has and includes all your hyperlinks to where you need to order certain reports to which emails you're sending at what time, when should you be communicating what information to your clients. Like it's all there.
Yeah, you could
Um,
almost sell it as a course. Like if you wanted to just, export all these PDFs, all these checklists, all these workflows, it should be dialed enough to where someone else can just purchase, look through everything and learn how to do it.
well, I appreciate it. That's definitely not my wheelhouse nor my strength. Susie
No, I'm just
Adamson.
I'm just saying
I'm
like
the
that is how dialed in your system should be.
yeah.
I do think that you should sell a course, but
But so Susie Adamson is the absolute queen of organization,
Mhm.
workflows. If somebody's with Compass and they need help figuring out that any of those sequences, 100% call her.
Yes,
Um,
Susie's great.
More than a few of my friends have worked with her directly and have nothing but amazing things to say.
Mhm.
So if you need help with workflows, and so then you don't even have to build the recipe. You can literally just have the recipe handed to you,
Yeah.
and then have everybody trained to be on the same page.
Mhm.
And she does customize it, not to create a commercial for her, but she's amazing. Um, I digress. What were we talking about?
We were talking about having systems so dialed in that someone else could just, look at it and learn how to build it out themselves.
Yeah, I mean, with the podcast, that's marketing, right? And
Mhm.
so it's a leg of marketing that I do. It's referral based, it's relationship referral based marketing for agents. So I can remain and maintain my top of mind of being the San Francisco agent. And so with that, I had to approach it as a marketing campaign that's consistently running each week. And then within that, we had to build our pre-production, our production, our post-production page. And then when it comes to post-production, and you work with it, there's checklists, we use Trello boards,
Mhm.
everything has to be dialed. And so there's a level of consistency that we could push out
Yeah,
and
and if you don't
quality.
have those, then um you can't really test anything. If you don't have a system, then there's no system to
True.
test and to make better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the other great point that you make is, and I've had this with the property. It's like just because you have the system, it's not going to be perfect,
Yeah.
and it's fine. Like you want outcomes. You do want to figure out whether this thing's going to fall apart or it's not right or what you need to tweak to it. So then the next time it's better, but then the people running it are also better.
Yeah.
They understand where the pitfalls are and the red flags. And it's interesting. You and I had a conversation earlier today. I think this is really important too for agents to know is you should have areas and projects within your business that your team has the full autonomy to
Mhm.
totally fail safely.
Mhm.
And I know you and I talked about it, but I'll explain what I mean so everybody else can get up to speed. But like to really learn something, you need to be able to do something dangerous in a safe way, right? Skateboarding. If you want to learn skateboarding, get a helmet, get some pads, make sure you're on a good surface and then go practice. You're going to fall and you're putting on the pads so you're safe, but then you can develop the skills to actually get better at it and fall less. And so like you and I were talking about with production, for example, as long as you're not publishing it, right? If you publish something, then it can fail. It could blow up. Like that could be off brand. It could be off putting. It could be the mistake, a failure. But if we're trying to create a new thumbnail and you're just sending it to me, you can do 50 versions and there's no failure,
Yeah.
right? It's an opportunity for you to learn. It's an opportunity for me to see your work. It's an opportunity for us to collaborate and talk through different ideas, but there's not a fail point, right?
Yeah, and the good thing about that too is sometimes, um, you know, either the person creating the thing or the person having it done for them. We have an idea of what we want it to look like because that's just how it's been done. And so we kind of put ourselves in this creative box. But if
Yeah.
you have, fail safes, and you've communicated that specifically you are okay with that, then it gives that person to really completely step outside of the box, present
Yeah.
something to you that you just never would have thought of.
Yes.
And, now you're like, oh, wow, I, I would have never come up with that. And I really like it. Or
Yeah.
maybe I really like the direction you're headed. Let's keep refining it. But, I'm really happy to be seeing this creative flow.
Yeah. And I think, and you and I have talked about this, I think pre-framing it from the perspective of an assistant or a VA is incredibly important. If they come to me, and I've had this happen, and they're like, "Hey, here's a new newsletter that I created." I'm under the impression this is a new newsletter. It's
And it's
done,
final,
dialed,
it's about to go
right?
out.
And so then I'm looking at it from a critical perspective. But if
Hmm.
if you came to me and said, "Hey, I'm working on this idea. It's 60% flushed out. The copy's not there, the images aren't there, but what I'm looking for feedback on is the overarching flow of the layout. What's your opinion on that?" Right? It's you framed me in a way where you helped me set expectations, so I now know what to look at. But if you didn't and I just looked at it, I'd be like, why is there typos all over the place? These images aren't even on brand. This thing doesn't match. I would be looking at it from the wrong lens.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important for VAs and assistants to know if and how you're presenting and packaging something
I mean, it also
for.
saves me time as the virtual assistant because then, I don't have to build out this whole thing hoping you're going to like it at the end. Oh, I just want to show
Yeah.
him something great. You know, he's going to be really amazed at this thing. That's just not the reality. You want to be involved in the creation. You want to feel like a collaborator
Yeah.
because, yes, I'm your assistant, but I'm building something for you that you are going to present to the world as you.
Yes. And that person needs to be excited about it.
Hmm.
And so that's where that goes back to the collaboration. But I also think simultaneously that's where the rapport needs to be there,
Hmm.
because when we're really trying to get a product, especially with marketing pieces, and you're going back and forth and you want them pushed to be really good quality, you have to have enough rapport to
Hmm.
to talk to that person.
Yeah, if I'm going to talk in your language, I have to know you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's much easier when there is a like if you have a really, I'm just thinking, reflecting, when I have a really really solid good multi-layered relationship with a client and then I have to talk to them about a price adjustment, it's way easier
Hmm.
because I know I have a sense of how they're going to react or respond, or what piece of information they need from me to form the decision.
Hmm.
Like I know if they're decisive or indecisive. I know how at that point, do they like things in bullet point, or do they want a story, or like what's going to help them receive my message.
Hmm.
Whereas if I'm working with a cold lead and I really don't have that good of rapport, it's so hard because I'm literally just guessing and throwing darts at the wall at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like um, I'm I'm very big on relationships. That's kind of what drives me at every part of my life, whether it's been jobs or,
Yeah.
me. I'm also an herbalist. So that really requires personal relationships. And my delivery of information is different every time. I have to think critically about, well, how is this going to be received based on what I know about this person, what state they're currently in
Yeah.
emotionally. Some people really just want the cutthroat information, bullet points,
Yeah.
And then some people, they want more of a softer conversation, or
Yeah.
they want an emotional, empathetic conversation.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be able to morph and mirror and match that to get
Hmm.
to ultimately get to the result that they want. And
Yeah.
that's, it's first understanding like what the goal and outcome is, which that should probably be the first conversation when hiring a VA. Like, what are we hoping to achieve here?
Hmm.
And then by what date will we deem this a successful venture or not?
Yeah,
And
because
then,
also if you're hiring a VA and you're just like, oh, well, right now, I don't have a huge team. It's really just me as an agent and like a transaction coordinator. And so you're like, I just need them to clean up my email and respond to emails or something like that,
yeah,
something that you feel like in the moment doesn't require you
yeah,
to have a relationship with them. Okay, but as your business grows, wouldn't it be nice to have already had that time built in with this person? And as you grow, you can
yeah,
build more of a relationship with them and give them more tasks. And now they already know how you work, they already have
yeah,
communication um, flow with you, And so, uh, to me, it makes more sense to grow with an assistant and
yeah,
start off with something small and don't just treat them like they are expendable, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's interesting. You make a really good point because if I think about just let's just talk about marketing because that's where you and I have the most crossover. But with let's say this podcast, though it's an audio format. There's a video component, YouTube. There's the thumbnails. There's the copy that goes onto the thumbnails, the title, the descriptions. There's the accompanying newsletter, right?
Hmm.
And so if you kind of back up, that's a sound engineer for editing your audio and cleaning up any of that stuff.
Hmm.
Totally different skill than a video editor and video production, which is a different skill than creating a thumbnail and then different skill again from having solid grammar and understanding copy, which is a different skill than email marketing campaigns.
Hmm.
And so which I know and appreciate how hard you work because it taxes you in a lot of like these are specialty categories. Like Mr. Beast straight up was saying he spent like $40,000 on one thumbnail.
Hmm.
One thumbnail.
Yeah.
That's one like person's skill to develop and build this one thing. And now you're like me, I'm asking one person to do this whole array of things that are all specialties within it. And so I think where agents go wrong with VAs is they just throw too many things on their plate and expect them then to be masters of this whole domain and it's a very tall ask
Yeah. I
because
mean,
again there's such nuance like the amount of time that you and I had worked to work together to get on the same page of what does a short how does that how does a good short look, how does it perform, what are the expectations around that, how is that different than a thumbnail? Like you and I had the we I can't even tell you how many hours we had to research it, look
yeah.
up things, go back, have conversations, test, go back, look at things again. And so it's the Jack or the Jill of all trades.
Hmm.
Like I again to kind of summarize, if an agent is looking for one person who's like this doctor of each of these categories, it's going to be a hard. You're setting somebody up for failure, is my
Yeah.
point.
And then also it just speaks to um VAs shouldn't be expendable and shouldn't be treated like they are, because essentially you're handing them work that you don't want to do, you
Yeah,
know. You don't want to do it. It feels, whether that's because you don't have the capacity for it, or it's just not the type of work that you
yeah.
excel in for whatever reason. You don't want to do it, but it's
Well, it's
still
usually not income producing. Like agents want
right.
to do income producing tasks, and we try to get non income producing tasks onto somebody else's plate.
Yeah, but it's still really valuable work, really necessary work. And so,
Yeah, it needs to be done. It could be done by somebody else. Is our thought
mhm,
process.
yeah. So I think just making sure that you remember that as you are building the relationship and are growing with this person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting observation.
Well, I think
Um,
that there's different attitudes too towards
yeah,
VAs. There's some people who are like, I'm gonna hire overseas because they're cheap, they can get it done, and then I'm gonna put, you know, a software on their computer to make sure that that mouse is moving every single second.
yeah,
And like, I understand where that comes from, and you might definitely get work from them, and it might be a valuable exchange. But I feel like there's so much that you're missing by, you could still be outcome driven. You could still say, hey, this is
yeah.
what I expect to be delivered to me, but really spend a little bit more time nurturing conversation, nurturing understanding,
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I would say simultaneously, from like the other perspective, is I think, y- and I've ran into the problem is I think sometimes VAs, because I've worked with more than a few in my career, is they sometimes don't speak up.
hmm
Of they don't want to let you down, so
Yeah.
they'll say they can do it,
hmm
and in the project crash and burns.
Yeah.
And so I think on the other side is really understand that person's skill set and don't try to push outside the parameters that they would actually be capable of performing.
Yeah. And if
Um,
you want them to learn something, then talk about, well, what does that look like? How long will it
yeah,
take you to learn it? What does this actually entail? It's
yeah,
okay to have someone learn something for you, but just be willing to have both people need to be willing to have that
yeah,
honest conversation. A VA needs to be more confident,
yes.
you
I
know.
agree. I think it's a two-way street. But I also, again, simultaneously, I think because you and I have had this conversation, the brain that it takes to be like really creative is
hmm
very different than the brain that takes to be highly analytical.
Yeah.
And so expecting a really creative marketing solution and somebody who's like highly detailed, it, you're kind of asking for opposing wishes.
hmm
And so it's like I actually think starting with a personality assessment, a skills assessment, and kind of doing a deeper dive that way. Then looking at what are the areas of my business do I actually need to help with? Where are the gaps? What do I really need to get off my plate? And
hmm
then can this person help facilitate those? And then it's the building from there.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
because otherwise, and I know you've observed this in additionally from listening to all the conversations, otherwise VAs don't make it past 3 months.
Yeah, and also that way you're not, as the person hiring a VA, you're not just like, "Oh, I really like this person, they seem really nice, we had a good conversation, I'm going to hire them." By going through a personality test, it gives you as the one hiring a little bit some more parameters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just it's a process and it takes time, and I think That's my 2 cents on it. If somebody's actually curious to get to know you and to potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to actually find you?
Well, one, they can definitely, if they contact you, you've been a great referral for me. They can go to virtualwithmarissa.com and
All
find
right.
me there. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, Marissa, this was a pleasure. You did amazing today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.